You've seen it before. That flat green plant pushing through the hardest, most compacted soil in your yard. The kind of ground where even grass gives up. And your first reaction? Yeah. You probably hate it. You pull it out, you spray it, you try to erase it. But pause for a second, because what you're about to remove it doesn't behave like something invading. It behaves like something responding. Today we're going to completely reframe this so-called annoying weed called plantain. And by the end, you might realize it's not the problem in your yard, it's the response. Plantain is one of the most disliked weeds in gardening communities. It doesn't grow tall. It doesn't bloom in a way people admire. It doesn't beautify anything. Instead, it shows up exactly where nothing else wants to live. Driveway cracks, bare soil, hard-packed ground beaten down by footsteps, tires, neglect. And often the soil around it doesn't just feel hard. It behaves almost like a sealed surface. Water tends to run off instead of sinking in. Even after rain, the top layer can dry into a thin crust that resists anything trying to grow through it. In fact, centuries ago, Native Americans had a name for it that roughly meant white man's footprint. Because wherever land was disturbed, this plant showed up first, almost like it was following human damage. Which raises a strange question. Why would anything choose the worst possible soil on purpose? To understand that, you have to look at how it's built. Break a plantain leaf, and something unusual happens. It doesn't snap cleanly, it stretches. Fibers pull apart like internal cables, strong, flexible, almost engineered. That's not an accident. That's survival design. Most plants collapse under pressure. Plantain doesn't. It reinforces itself. If you look closely at the surface of the leaf, you'll notice subtle longitudinal veins running in parallel, almost like reinforced wiring. These structures distribute force instead of letting it concentrate in one point, which is why the leaf can survive repeated bending, stepping, and tearing without immediately failing. And then there's its shape. Instead of growing upward, it spreads out flat in a rosette pattern, hugging the ground. Low profile, hard to cut, hard to remove. It even survives mowing because it stays below the blade line. And when you step on it, it doesn't fight back. It adapts. It presses itself even closer to the soil, like it's learning from pressure instead of breaking under it. But here's where things get interesting. Most people think plantain is taking over their lawn. In reality, it's usually arriving after the damage is already done. Because compacted soil isn't just bad soil, it's suffocating soil. No airflow, no water movement. Microorganisms slowly dying underneath. In that kind of environment, even decomposition slows down. Organic matter doesn't break apart efficiently, which means nutrients stop cycling properly. The ground becomes biologically quiet, less active, less responsive, almost inert. From an ecological standpoint, that ground is already failing. And plantain? It's not the cause. It's the first responder. Its leaves act like living umbrellas, shading the soil and holding in moisture, but the real work is underground. Its roots are surprisingly powerful, pushing through dense, compacted earth like tiny drills. And every time those roots break through, they create channels. Air gets in, water gets in, life starts moving again. Even the decaying leaves help rebuild organic matter. Instead of improving the soil directly, something unexpected starts happening below the surface, root by root, layer by layer. Over time, these small channels don't stay isolated. They begin to connect, forming loose networks in the soil structure. What was once tightly packed ground starts developing subtle pockets of space, tiny corridors where microbes, moisture, and air can circulate more freely. This is why herbicides often miss the point. You can remove plantain, but if the soil is still compacted, it will come back, because nothing has changed. You're just erasing the symptom, not the condition. In ecology, these are often referred to as pioneer species in ecological succession, not to compete, but to restart the system. It shows up first in damaged environments. It does the hardest job in nature, starting recovery from almost nothing. And once the soil begins to heal, something interesting happens. It starts losing its advantage. taller grasses return, stronger plants take over, and plantain slowly fades out on its own. It doesn't win, it exits when it's no longer needed. So if it keeps coming back in your yard, that's not random. It's telling you something. Same path being walked, same ground being compressed, same damage repeating. And nature keeps sending the same solution. But plantain isn't just about soil, it's also one of the most accessible natural first aid plants you'll ever step on. For centuries, it's been used in traditional herbal medicine across cultures. And if you've ever been outdoors, hiking, gardening, just being outside, it might already have been growing under your feet the whole time. The surprising part is that this yard weed has compounds that modern skincare companies already isolate and refine. Allantoin supports skin repair and is even used in medical skincare products. Aucubin has anti-inflammatory and antibacterial properties. In practical use, crushed leaves can be applied directly to minor irritations, insect bites, or small splinters. A simple field method is the classic poultice. Crush the leaf, release the juice, and apply it to the affected area. Within minutes, irritation can reduce noticeably. It's not magic. It's chemistry you just happen to find growing in the dirt. The texture of the crushed leaf often turns slightly glossy and moist, almost like it's releasing stored fluid under pressure. That surface film is what helps it adhere to skin long enough for the compounds to interact with the affected area. So at this point, the question changes. The real question isn't whether to remove it, but what conditions make it necessary in the first place. Because smart land management doesn't fight symptoms blindly. It reads signals. And plantain is a signal. It's basically saying, this soil is compacted, it needs recovery, and the solution isn't more chemicals, it's restoration. Aerate the soil. Add organic matter. Improve structure, airflow, and moisture balance. Once the ground recovers, something almost ironic happens. Plantain doesn't need to be killed. It simply stops having a job. And it leaves. Plantain is one of the most trampled, sprayed, and misunderstood plants in the world, and yet, it's also one of the most quietly useful. It protects damaged soil, it accelerates recovery, and it even offers basic medicinal support along the way. So the next time you see it growing in a crack in the pavement or a dead corner of your yard, don't react immediately. Just pause. The next time you see it growing through concrete, it might not be invading anything. It might be responding. Sometimes it's just the thing trying to fix it. Nature doesn't waste effort. Even weeds are information. And once you learn to read them, your whole yard starts to make a lot more sense. If you want more videos like this, where we break down the hidden logic behind the natural world, stick around. I'll see you in the next one.